All right, let's dive into the world of Broadway. Specifically, a brand new production of Sunset Blvd. And apparently it's making a lot of noise.
Oh, Sunset Blvd. Now that's a classic. I'm curious already. Especially with a Tony Award-winning director like Jamie Lloyd at the helm.
Yeah, Jamie Lloyd, you know him,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely familiar with his work. So, what's the twist? What's got everyone buzzing about this production?
Well, how about this for a twist? Nicole Scherzinger is playing Norma Desmond,
Wait, the Nicole Scherzinger, the pop star, as Norma Desmond?
the one and only. And the review we're looking at today, well, let's just say it calls this production the perfect mix of bombastic and restrained. Claims it's the most fun a tragedy could ever be.
Interesting. That's quite a claim. Sounds like Lloyd is trying to walk a tightrope there.
He is. So, you know me, I always like to start with the performances. And this reviewer, he was absolutely floored by Scherzinger.
Okay, color me intrigued. What did they say, specifically?
Well, he called her performance this whirlwind of originality, mischief, wit, and drama. Said she just completely owns the stage.
Wow, it doesn't sound like your typical pop star performance then. Sounds like some serious acting chops are on display. I'm already seeing a fascinating angle here.
What's that?
The reviewer seems to be drawing this deliberate parallel between Scherzinger, the pop icon, and Norma Desmond, the faded Hollywood star.
Oh, absolutely. I noticed that too. It's like the director is playing with this idea intentionally, making us think about our own fascination with celebrity culture, you know?
For sure. It's like the production is holding up a mirror to the audience and asking, why are we so obsessed with these larger-than-life figures? What do we project onto them?
That's a great point. Now, on top of the whole pop star meets Hollywood icon thing, the reviewer also describes the production as visually stunning, but with this unexpected minimalist feel to it.
Minimalist, huh? How so?
He mentions stark black and white design elements, innovative use of cameras, and a really stripped-down set, which, he says, creates this interesting contrast with the musical's dramatic score.
Ah, the minimalist approach. It actually reminds me of some of Jamie Lloyd's previous work. He directed that revival of A Doll's House with Jessica Chastain, remember? That one also had a very pared-down aesthetic.
Oh, yeah, I remember that production. It was really powerful.
It was. It really put the focus on the raw emotion of the performances, and it seems like Lloyd might be going for something similar here.
Definitely. He has a very specific vision, and he's not afraid to strip away all the bells and whistles to achieve it. Which brings me to something that's going to blow your mind.
All right, hit me with it.
So there's this moment in the show where the actor playing Joe, he actually leaves the theater during a musical number.
Wait, he leaves the theater, like walks out the door.
Yep. And not just that, he walks through Times Square singing live while the cameras follow him.
Whoa! Hold on, that's something else. What a bold move.
Right. Talk about blurring the lines between performance and reality.
And just the logistics of that. I mean, how do they even pull that off?
I know. But according to this reviewer, they make it work seamlessly. He said it was a total thrill, especially because you catch glimpses of things like Scherzinger's dressing room while it's happening.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And he even joked that it's impressive they managed to avoid any interruptions from the chaos of Times Square.
It really speaks to the level of detail and planning that went into this whole thing. And the audience, they must be going wild.
Oh, absolutely. The reviewer said the audience's reaction was unlike anything he'd seen on Broadway in years. This thunderous, sustained standing ovation.
Wow. Now that's the sign of a truly captivated audience.
It is. But hold on, there's one more thing I wanted to bring up.
Oh, do tell.
The reviewer did mention one sequence toward the end of the show that he felt was a little messy. Apparently there's a lot of running around to depict the events leading up to the climax, and he wasn't completely sold on it.
Even in a rave review like this, there are always going to be elements that don't quite hit the mark for everyone, right?
Right. It's almost like this burst of chaos in an otherwise meticulously crafted world.
Makes you wonder what the director was going for there.
Now let's get back to Scherzinger. The reviewer had some really interesting things to say about her voice. He described it as a divine semi-purr, almost like this menacing demi-whisper.
Ooh, that sounds chilling. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
He said it makes those iconic lines like, "I am big, it's the pictures that got small." They take on this whole new sinister quality when she delivers them.
It's not just about the glamour anymore. It's about a woman teetering on the edge, holding on to her fame, or the idea of it anyway, no matter the cost.
Exactly. And Lloyd's direction seems to be playing into that unsettling vibe too. The reviewer mentions how the innovative use of cameras allows us to see Norma in close-up at certain moments, like we're getting a glimpse into her psyche.
Oh, wow. It's like we're complicit in her descent.
Right. The reviewer even used the phrase, toying with the boundaries of theater and fan worship, which I thought was so interesting. It's almost as if the production is making us question our own relationship with celebrity and the stories we create around these famous figures.
It's not just a straightforward revival, then. It's making a statement
Hmm,
about our culture, our obsessions, and how those things intersect with the world of theater.
definitely. But before we get too deep into all that, I want to circle back to something the reviewer mentioned earlier about the cameras. He said they weren't just there to highlight Scherzinger's performance, but also to add this visual urgency to moments where the story might otherwise drag.
That's clever, like he's borrowing techniques from film to keep the audience engaged.
And speaking of film, I think it's time we talked about Andrew Lloyd Webber's legendary score. What did the reviewer have to say about the music?
You're right, we can't forget the music. He actually didn't go too deep into specific numbers, but he did describe Lloyd and David Cullen's orchestrations as relentlessly swelling and over the top.
He contrasted that with the stripped-down visual style, right?
Absolutely. It sounds like Lloyd is creating this deliberate tension between what we're seeing and what we're hearing.
So let's talk about the music in that incredible Times Square scene we were discussing earlier. You know, the one where the actor ventures out into the real world?
Oh, yes, where he just walks out into the city.
Exactly. The reviewer called it a total thrill and praised the choreography by Fabian Aloise. Imagine dancers moving against the backdrop of Times Square, fluttering and slinking this way and that, he wrote. It sounds almost cinematic.
It sounds like Lloyd really is bringing those theatrical and cinematic techniques together.
And think about the coordination, the precision, to make that work every night, amidst all the chaos of Times Square.
It's mind-boggling. It really speaks to the boldness of Lloyd's vision. He's not just breaking the fourth wall, he's smashing it to pieces.
And, the reviewer pointed out that this isn't the first time Lloyd has done something like this. He had Jessica Chastain walk out of the theater at the end of his A Doll's House production, too. It's like his signature move.
He's constantly challenging our assumptions about where the performance begins and ends. What a way to create a truly immersive, unforgettable experience.
I'm with you there. But before we get completely carried away by the spectacle, I think it's important to remember that, at its core, Sunset Blvd is a story about human frailty, the seductive nature of fame, the danger of clinging to the past.
You're absolutely right. Amidst all the glitz and the glamour, there's this deeply emotional core to the story. And that's what makes it resonate with audiences no matter the era.
So, as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into this review, I think we need to ask ourselves,
Does this production still resonate today? What can we learn from Norma Desmond's story in, 2024?
that's the big question, isn't it? On the surface, yeah, it's a story about the pitfalls of fame, how beauty fades. But I think there's something deeper there.
Oh, definitely. It's that universal human need for connection, for validation, for purpose. And when we don't find those things, it's so easy to get caught up in, in illusions.
Like Norma, clinging to her past. That line, I am big, it's the pictures that got small. Aren't we all kind of, dealing with that tension, how we see ourselves versus how the world sees us?
Absolutely. And how the world doesn't see us sometimes. That's the real tragedy for Norma. She was adored once, right? But now she feels invisible, forgotten, and she'll do anything to get that back.
So I can't help but wonder what Scherzinger brings to this role. I mean, she's a successful performer in her own right. Does she connect with that? With the struggle to stay relevant in a world that's always looking for the next big thing?
That's a fascinating question. I'm sure her own experiences inform her performance in ways we can't even imagine.
There was this one detail in the review that really stuck with me. After the curtain call, the production rolls credits, just like a movie.
Oh, wow, how clever. It's like a final reminder that we've just witnessed a story about Hollywood, where reality and fantasy are constantly blurring.
And it circles back to that whole meta element we talked about, casting a pop star as a faded movie star. It's like the director saying, hey, you're part of this too. You, the audience, you're the ones who create these narratives around fame and celebrity.
So true. Leaving the audience with questions about their own role in the machine of fame. And remember, the reviewer said the audience was just blown away, cheering, a roaring standing ovation.
He even joked that there should be paramedics and oxygen waiting outside the theater for people as they emerge, dazed and delirious from the crazy fabulousness of Sunset Blvd.
Sounds like Lloyd has really created something special here.
He has. But let's talk about the cameras for a minute. The reviewer said they weren't just there for close-ups on Scherzinger. They actually gave this story more punch, more visual energy, especially in scenes that might have dragged otherwise.
That's smart, using film techniques to keep things moving.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned scenes exploring the venality of Hollywood, all the shady dealings going on around Norma's mansion. And he said, even if you didn't follow every detail, the visuals kept you hooked.
So those cameras are doing some serious storytelling work.
They are. Now, let's talk about the choreography.
Oh, yes. What did the reviewer say about that?
Well, he called it a feast of movement. Dancers lining up in vertical and horizontal rows, splayed out, fluttering, slinking. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a movie musical.
Which, given Lloyd's cinematic approach, makes total sense.
It really does. And it's amazing how he's weaving together all these elements. The set, the music, the cameras, and now this choreography. It's all telling this story in a way that feels both new and classic at the same time.
Exactly. And speaking of weaving it all together, let's go back to that Times Square scene, the one where the actor just walks off the stage and into the sea.
Oh yeah, that was mind-blowing. And the music during that scene apparently is just incredible. The choreography too. The reviewer described this whirlwind of movement around the actor as he's walking through the streets.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
And the sound design. The reviewer was joking about how impressive it is that you don't hear any honking horns or, pedestrians yelling at the actor for holding things up.
That's hilarious, but also really impressive. Talk about attention to detail.
So we've talked about the visuals, the staging, even the sound design.
Okay.
But there's one thing the reviewer mentioned that stood out to me because it wasn't totally positive.
Oh, what was that?
He said there was a moment, toward the end, a messy sequence, where the action on stage just felt out of sync with the rest of the production. He called it a basic movement class bit of execution, which is a kind of a harsh contrast to the rest of the show, which he considered gold standard.
Even the best productions have their flaws, right?
Exactly. It makes you wonder what happened there. Was it a directorial choice?
Fair.
Choreography issue?
Hard to say without seeing it for ourselves. But it's a good reminder that no work of art is perfect.
And it reminds us that art is subjective too. What one person sees as messy, another person might find innovative.
Absolutely. And remember, we're only getting one perspective here. We're looking at this one reviewer's opinion.
True. So to wrap up our deep dive, what's the takeaway? Should our listeners rush out to see this show?
I think it's safe to say the Sunset Blvd is a bold, ambitious reimagining of the classic. The set design, the cameras, Scherzinger's performance, the choreography, it all adds up to a pretty unforgettable experience.
It does. But like you said, art is subjective. What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. So go in with an open mind. Be ready to be challenged, to think about maybe some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in.
Maybe even be inspired to seek out other reviews or see the production for yourself.
Wouldn't that be great? To take our deep dive as a jumping off point and then keep exploring the world of Sunset Blvd.
It would. But before our listeners do that, there's one final thought I want to leave them with. We've talked so much about the spectacle, the visual elements, the star power. But I think we need to remember, Sunset Blvd is really a story about a woman, about her identity, her place in the world, and how it's all slipping away.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the glitz and the glamour, but under all that, it's a very human story about longing, about loss, that desperation to hold on to what you're losing.
And that's where it connects with us, right?
Yeah.
In 2024, we're all about image these days, social media. It just feeds this constant need for validation.
It's like we're all performing a little bit for some invisible audience.
Exactly. Just like Norma holding on to her past. I am big, pictures that got small. Aren't we all kind of, in a way, stuck in that same struggle?
Oh, I think so. It's like how we see ourselves versus how the world sees us, and sometimes how the world just doesn't see us at all, and that's got to be painful.
And that's what makes me think about Scherzinger and what she brings to this role. She's lived that life, right? The ups and downs of fame. Does she see herself in Norma?
That's such a good question. I'm sure she does. On some level, it must inform her performance.
It has to. And the reviewer, he described her voice in a way that really struck me. He called it this divine semi-purr, almost menacing, like a demi-whisper that made him strain to hear.
Wow. That's an incredible image. It's like she's both seductive and desperate at the same time.
Exactly. Like she wants to be seen, but is also terrified of it. And that makes me wonder, how does Scherzinger, someone who's dealt with all that fame, how does she connect with that struggle to stay relevant?
Yeah. That's something we can only really understand by seeing her performance, I guess.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Sunset Blvd, I think the biggest takeaway is this. This production is more than just a flashy revival.
Yeah.
It makes you think. It makes you question your own relationship with fame, with those anxieties that we all kind of carry around.
I think that's spot on.
So should people see it?
If you're looking for something that's going to challenge you, visually, intellectually, I'd say go for it. But remember, art is subjective, right? What speaks to one person might not resonate with another.
That's the beauty of it. So go in with an open mind. You might be surprised by what you find.
And maybe even a little dazed by the crazy fabulousness, as the reviewer put it.
That's right. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the things that intrigue you.